Hey, West Forsyth High School cross country. Got a text message today from an athlete who was trying to work on how they could be more confident and less afraid about racing. And so, what I wanted to share with you is a quick little excerpt from this book called How Bad Do You Want It by Matt Fitzgerald, which is an excellent book. If you are really interested in running and sports psychology, I think you'll find it super interesting. The chapters are small, and they kind of go to each individual topic, and they use real world examples of athletes in various situations to explain kind of the brain science points that are going on. But anyway, let me read this to you real quick. Perceived effort has two layers. The first layer is how the athlete feels. The second layer is how the athlete feels about how she feels. The first layer is strictly physiological, whereas the second is emotional or affective. Crudely put, an athlete can have either a good attitude or a bad attitude about any level of discomfort. If she has a good attitude, she'll be less bothered by the feeling and will likely push harder. Research has shown that when athletes feel worse than expected during a race, they tend to develop a bad attitude about their discomfort, and as a result, they slow down even more than they need to. Of course, from a strictly physiological perspective, they don't need to slow down at all. In 2005, Alan St. Clair Gibson studied the effect of thwarted expectations on perception of effort in a group of 16 well-trained runners. The experiment had two parts. In one part, the subjects were required to run at a steady pace for 20 minutes on a treadmill. At the end of each minute, they were asked to rate their perception of effort as well as their positive effect or enjoyment level. In the other part of the experiment, the subjects were asked to run for 10 minutes at the same pace. At the end of the 10th minute, they were told they had to run 10 minutes longer. So, the second run was in fact identical to the first, but the subjects expected it to be shorter and hence easier. The actual order of the two runs was randomized. When he reviewed the data he collected, St. Clair Gibson found that the runners' perceived efforts ratings spiked and their positive effect scores nosedived right after they were informed that they would have to run 10 minutes longer than they expected to. The runners did not feel worse on a purely physical level, but they developed a bad attitude about how they felt, and in effect, they did feel worse. Research on the psychology of pain has produced similar findings. A number of studies have compared the effects of two contrasting anticipatory attitudes, acceptance and suppression, on pain perception. Some people have a natural tendency to look ahead to the repetition of a familiar pain stimulus with acceptance. They tell themselves, this is going to hurt, but no worse than before. Other people try to cope with the same situation through suppression, a form of denial. They tell themselves, in effect, I really hope this doesn't hurt as much as it did the last time. Psychologists have generally found that compared to suppression, acceptance reduces the unpleasantness of the pain without reducing the pain itself. For this reason, it is a more effective coping skill. The same skill also reduces perceived effort. In a 2014 study published in Medicine and Science in Sports and Endurance, psychologist Ellen Ivanova looked at the effects of a certain type of psychotherapy called acceptance and commitment therapy on endurance performance in a group of non-athletic women. Acceptance and commitment therapy entails learning to accept unpleasant feelings as unavoidable features in certain experiences. In this case, exercise. Ivanova felt that the therapy reduced perceived effort at a high intensity of exercise by 55% and increased time to exhaustion at that same intensity by 15%. I mean, that's big. In common language, this attitude of acceptance towards an impending disagreeable experience is called bracing yourself. Many of us use this coping skill instinctively to reduce the unpleasantness of everyday trials such as a trip to the dentist office. Indeed, observed psychologists Jeff Galack and Thomas Mavis in a 2011 paper published in the Journal of Experimental Psychology. People often choose to expect the worst of an upcoming experience in hopes of creating a more favorable contrast between their expectation and reality. In the context of endurance competition, this favorable contrast can enhance performance. The more discomfort an athlete expects, the more she can tolerate. And the more discomfort she can tolerate, the faster she can go. It's no wonder then that champion endurance athletes habitually brace themselves for important races. The great British runner Mo Farah told a reporter in the Daily Mirror ahead of his first marathon, "This will be the hardest race of my life." He wasn't being negative. He was bracing himself. You never know how much your next race is going to hurt. Perception of effort is mysterious. You can push yourself equally hard in two separate races and yet somehow feel on top of your suffering in one race and overwhelmed by it in another, because you never know what you'll find inside that black box until you open it up. There's a temptation to hope, perhaps not quite consciously, that your next race won't be one of those grinding affairs. This hope is a poor coping skill. Bracing yourself, always expecting your next race to be your hardest yet, is a much more mature and effective way to prepare mentally for competition. So, the bottom line is, go into races saying, yeah, this is going to hurt, just like it did last time, just like it did in practice. I've gone through this before, I can do it again, but I'm going to expect this to be hard. And then when the pain comes and the hard comes, magically your brain says, cool, we got this. It gives you a little bit more rope, and you're actually able to perform better than if you sort of just secretly hoped that maybe it wasn't going to hurt. Anyway, hope this helps you as a coping mechanism that you can use to be able to handle some of your race nervousness and to be able to continue to execute in races when it gets hard. And it always gets hard in races. Anyway, hope this is helpful. We will talk to you soon. Bye.